I don't think you're going to see what you're about to see anywhere else. Nobody else will cover the process like we will right now. Today kicks off the race for the nomination for the Republican president. And so let me explain how this is going to go. There are 2,439 delegates at stake total. 2,439 delegates up for grabs. You need 1,215 to become the nominee. Today is 40. The month of January is not where delegates are won. There's only 2 states that are going to vote in January, Iowa and New Hampshire. This is not about accumulating delegates. This is about momentum. This is about winnowing the field. But let me just give you the stats. In January, 62 delegates are at stake. That's just 2.55% of all delegates are at stake. In February, we had 2 additional states, Nevada and South Carolina. Also, by the way, the Virgin Islands with its 8 delegates also are part of that. So all told, at the end of the month, the end of February, 5.85% of all delegates will be awarded, right? So 4 states and a territory will have voted. That's it. But that's what's at stake. When we get to March, that's when things heat up. It's just like basketball, March Madness. DC, the Northern Marianas Islands, and 30 states have contests for a total of 1,592 delegates. That's 65.5% of all delegates will be awarded in March alone. 65% of all of the delegates awarded in March. And when March is done, if you add March, January, and February, we'll be at 71% of delegates that will have been awarded. In April, we only have 247 delegates up for grabs. And in May, there are 294. By the way, if you hang on to June, 12 delegates. So here's the question. How do delegates get awarded? That is what everybody really cares about. Let me kind of walk you through this. I'll read you this, and this is important. At-large delegates are statewide delegates who must be residents of the state. Each state receives 10 at-large delegates, and a bonus at-large delegates are awarded based on a recent Republican electoral success. So if your state is doing really well as a Republican state, you get the 10 at-large delegates, plus you get these bonus delegates for the following things. The election of a Republican governor, the election of a U.S. senator, and obviously you can get 2 because you have 2 U.S. senators. A Republican majority of a state's congressional delegation, that gets you a bonus delegate. A Republican majority of one or all chambers of the state legislature, and a majority of the state's electoral votes having been cast for Donald Trump in 2020. That's where you separate the states. So that gets you your at-large delegates. That's how we come up with that. Additionally, each state is awarded congressional delegates. Okay, by the way, before I finish the at-large, let me just tell you, because I mentioned a couple of the territories, right? Territories in the District of Columbia are awarded a specific number of at-large delegates. American Samoa, Guam, and the Northern Marianas Islands, and the Virgin Islands all get 6 delegates. The District of Columbia receives 16 delegates, and Puerto Rico receives 20. Don't ask me why. Those are the facts. Congressional delegates must be residents of the district which they represent, and each state is allocated 3 delegates per congressional district. That's why you're going to see big states like California, 166 delegates. That's a Super Tuesday, March 5th state, okay? That's the big prize there. Texas is number 2, right? That's going to get you, I think, 161. By the way, just as a side note, since I covered the big, let me cover the small. The Virgin Islands only has 4. So the next piece that I want to walk you through is what we call threshold. What I mean by threshold is Iowa awards all of their delegates proportionally, and all delegates for this first early state part have to be awarded proportionally. What does that mean? Well, that means that whatever the ranking is statewide, they allocate those delegates proportionally as they would, by the ranking that you get and the distribution of your vote. So if you get 50% of the vote, you get 50% of the delegates, right? It goes like that. In New Hampshire and in many more states working forward, and we will cover those as the states come up, there's a threshold. New Hampshire is 10%. If you don't hit 10%, you don't get anything. Iowa, I think they want a more inclusive process. They want people to come there, and so they don't want them to blow it off right out of the gate. So how do you do that? You keep low polling people staying in there, knowing that they'll get a proportion potentially of a delegate if they stick around. In New Hampshire, if you don't get 10%, you get nothing. So that's a big thing going forward. I've brought this up in the past in the case of like South Carolina in 2016. Trump got something like 26%, 27%. I forgot what the exact number was. And he basically took home all the other delegates because the other candidates weren't even hitting South Carolina's threshold at what it had been set in 2016. That's a big thing going forward. And we've got to remember that. Coincidentally, I brought up these states, right? In New Jersey, they only have 12 delegates because, as I mentioned, how these delegates get awarded at large based on their previous votes, they don't do well. And so you're going to see places on Super Tuesday that matter a lot more. To give you a sense of these states, let's go through just what Super Tuesday looks like. So on Super Tuesday, that's March 5th. We talked about January. We talked about February. When we kick into March, you've got the DC primaries on Sunday the 3rd, concluding then. Then on Monday, March 4th, you've got the North Dakota caucus. Here's where the big money is. The big money is going to be on Tuesday, March 5th. This is why everybody says you got to get through those early states and then you're focused on Super Tuesday, March 5th. Alabama, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, and the Vermont primaries, as well as the Alaska, American Samoa, and Utah caucuses. That's your big number there, right? I mentioned all of those delegates that were up in March, right? Let's just look back at what I said in March, that you've got 1,592 delegates, 65% of all delegates in March. This March 5th, that's where almost all of them are. There's some additional states that vote on the 19th, the Northern Marianas caucuses on the 15th. But let me tell you, March 5th, that's where it's at. That's what everybody is focused on, is March 5th. If you can get by January, Iowa, New Hampshire, and then Nevada and South Carolina in February, those are your 2 February states. All you're doing is looking to play here. The problem is you can run those other states like a high school election, focused, go to all 99 counties in Iowa, but then you better be ready for the big leagues. A national primary is what that amounts to on March 5th. And that's where all the focus is. If Donald Trump can string this thing out, get DeSantis to drop out, get Nikki Haley to drop out, he won't even have to make it to March 5th. March 5th is the prize. And if he gets there, trust me, he's the only candidate right now that's got the ability to run a national primary there.